Welcome to Think Big with Michael Zellner, powered by Platinum Jewelers. My guest today joining me for episode 134 is Craig Wiener for part 2 of the interview series with him for this podcast. For those that didn't hear or see part 1, Craig is a financial analyst from Memphis, Tennessee, and he graduated from Ridgeway High School back in 1979, also my alma mater. He received a scholarship to play basketball at the University of Tennessee. He handles millions of dollars for I'd say over 100 clients throughout the country. And his clients are obviously very comfortable with him and trust him. I would bet probably some of them with their life savings. During part 1 earlier this year, when we talked about his younger life growing up here in Memphis, playing basketball at Ridgeway High School, we had just started to talk about some of the basketball camps he was invited to with some of the all-time greats in the NBA before we finish part 1. We will pick it up there today in part 2 and continue to talk about his life in basketball and a few other things. And then Craig is going to come back on for part 3. In the final interview series with him, when we do part 3, we will talk about what he does for a living, which is handle people's money.
All of Craig's ex-girlfriends. That's what we'll talk about.
We're going to talk about
That's
money.
part 4.
Yeah, part 4. Exactly. Right. Part 4. Yeah, that'll probably be the longest one. We're going to talk about money in part 3 and maybe give a few little strategies of why he thinks he's done so well over the years. Definitely want to hear about his mentor, Thomas Dorsey, who just recently, over the last few years, sold his company for over $300 million, and talk about some of the people that are actually most special to him, his family. Craig, thanks for coming back on today, man.
Oh, I love it. Anytime, Mike.
I want to start off with a funny story you told me about you and one of the best, players and dunkers of all time, Dominique Wilkins. If you would share with us the story about you took a charge on him at one of those invitational camps that you were privileged to attend, and then he said something to you afterwards. It was a pretty funny story.
Dominique Wilkins, I never really knew him personally, but at the BC camp in Georgia, he was one of the players. He was the same class as I was. I came out in 1979. Read about him in all of the Street and Smith's books, as I'd read about a lot of the players that I was finally actually on the court with for the first time. Dominique Wilkins, if you imagine him in the NBA, you sort of get this, he built up and got strong. But when he was in high school, man, he was almost like spaghetti. He was so thin and so wiry, even more wiry and thin than somebody like John Morant was when he first came in to the NBA. More like a Kevin Garnett, honestly, when Kevin Garnett first came into the NBA.
Right.
What happened in the situation that you're alluding to was one of those situations like a steal or something like that at half court. And he came running down the middle of the court. He's on the other. He wasn't on my team. And I stood where the line would be now. And I literally went just like this. I stood there. If you remember from the last show, I told you, I was not a great scorer. There were things, right. There were things that I could do that made me valuable to a team. Things like, hey, he's going to actually take a charge on Dominique Wilkins, or try to. Nobody else was going to do that. But I was like, yeah. So I go down there, I go like this, and I just literally close my eyes just like this. and he tries to jump. He jumps, and his knees hit me right in the chest. And I went straight back. He dunks the ball. He dunks the ball two-handed like this. He dunks it. The ball comes straight down and hits me right in the face. And like, it hits me right in the nose, and it hits me, and I'm like that. And he's standing right over me. And the referees are like, I mean, it was a clear charge, you know? And he's standing like after he dunks it, he's standing right over me. And he's like, he reached down with both of his arms and, you know, grabbed my arms, and he said something like, "Damn, man, I cannot believe you took that charge." And he like popped me up off the ground and helped me up and patted me on the back. And, you know, and then I looked at the coach and I said, "I need to come out. We need a concussion. We need a concussion protocol here." No, I mean, it was a moment that Dominique Wilkins, one of my favorite players ever, will never, ever remember. But I can assure you, it will be a moment that Craig Wiener will always remember.
Absolutely. You know, sort of reminds me a little bit in a different way. You know, I had on Andre Turner last year on one of my first few podcasts. Do you remember that play in the NCAA tournament with Clyde Drexler? And he actually jumped over him.
He jumped over him.
He jumped over him and dunked the ball. And that, you know, highlight still is out there today all over the internet and everything. And I reminded Andre of that.
And Andre's like, "I don't have a problem with it at all."
Right.
It's like, I mean, you know, and yeah. I mean,
yeah,
he couldn't make it over me. I'm
yeah.
a little bit taller than Andre.
Right. Yeah. You're like probably about 4 inches taller. So
Yeah.
So. He couldn't make it over you. You know, you had an incredible write-up that came out of that camp because of your performance there. You know, it said something to the fact that, you know, no one knew who the heck you were coming in there, but now they know your game. They call you, quote, Class A Division I lockdown defender. He's 6'3", 190 pounds, and strong as an ox, unquote. You ended up, you know, Craig, you got letters from lots of different colleges, you know, from after that week. A couple awesome things happened from your results, and one of them that you were invited to the Kentucky All-Star Camp, and you obviously weren't going to pass that up. You went to that camp too. What was the first big difference that you realized about this camp compared to the BC one?
Okay, so I have no idea how I got into the Kentucky camp. I think that Coach Dorsey Sims, who was the coach at Melrose High School at the time, I really feel like who I had a great relationship with, I think he just made some calls, honestly, and said, "Get this kid in there. He's not going to cause any problems. He's not going to embarrass himself." This was the most prestigious camp that I went to ever. I didn't realize it until I got there. I got invited to North Carolina's, camp as well, which I went to. But, North Carolina's was sort of like BC All-Star, you know. But when I went to Kentucky's, the thing that stood out the most there was there were 50 players. That was it. I mean, there were 50 players. And I remember the funny story that I did tell you was I remember calling my father the first day I was there, the first night I was there. And I couldn't believe where I was at. It was almost like one of those, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong movie theater.
Right.
Okay. One of those. I called my father and I talked to him very quietly. Back then, we just had phones out in the dorms. There's another thing about Kentucky is we stayed at the Kentucky Lodge at the time, which was like amazingly, it was not BC All-Star Camp. We had definitely upgraded. And I said to my father, I said, Dad, there are 50 players here. And he's like, that's it? Because at BC, there were probably 150. North Carolina, there were probably at least 100. But I said, Dad, there's 50 players here. And he goes, only 50? And I go, yeah. I go, guess who number 50 is? And he started laughing, and I was like, right here. And I'd like to say that after being there for a week, it's possible I was probably a lock between 44 and 50. Let's put it like that. But it was incredibly intimidating. At this camp, every single person that I had grown up in the prior couple of years, reading about in Street and Smith's, magazine, every single one of them was there. There was like nobody not there. The guys from California, the guys from New York, the guys from Washington State, the guys from Houston. I mean, it was, I'm telling you, it was one of these things is not like the other. And my roommate was Dirk Minifield, who played for Kentucky for 4 years, played in the NBA for years. Honestly, when I first went into the room and he was my roommate, I really was almost, I was sort of in shock. This is like, I don't want to say that these guys were my heroes because we were all contemporaries, but these were the guys that I was striving to sort of be. Okay. I knew, I was smart enough to know that I was not a good enough shooter, that my limitations were, my upside was limited. But these guys like Dirk Minifield and Isiah Thomas and Ricky Ross, and I can't remember the kid from California. I'll remember probably by the time we're done. But these guys their pictures were in Street and Smith. Now I was mentioned in honorable mention, All-American stuff like that. But these guys, their pictures were in there. I knew exactly who they were. He was already signed to Kentucky. He was already going to Kentucky. And it's like if you meet a movie star, it's like, I was kind of and I had a room with him. The great thing is that Dirk was just absolutely spectacular. So probably recognized what I'm telling you now, and immediately leveled the playing field so that we could have great conversations at night. And it would be an enjoyable week. which it turned out being remarkable. Very similar to BC All-Star Camp. I really just focused on my strengths. I mean, at this camp, I really never had to even touch the ball at this camp to be effective when I got in. I never started, honestly, at BC camp and this camp and at North Carolina camp, I was I just happy to be there. I was just happy to get in the damn game. And these camps are designed so that players get equal playing time. Okay. So, you're not, that's why the Kentucky camp was so unbelievable. There were only 50 players. So we all really got, if you played a 48-minute game, the really great players got, they probably played 38, 40 minutes, but I played, 20 to 25 minutes. It wasn't like I was in for put him in with 30 seconds to go. There really wasn't any of that it wasn't that kind of basketball. It was real, and there were coaches there, they wanted to evaluate everybody. You never know when you're going to have, a player that, look at Ja Morant. I mean, I'm sitting there, I've mentioned his name twice. You never know when you're going to skip over somebody, and you just want to make sure. And plus, like I said, I had great grades. I was an honor student, president of my student council my senior year. So I had a lot of things outside of basketball that coaches didn't mind taking a flyer on. Right. We're not going to have to worry about this kid. He's going to do his schoolwork. He's going to show up to practice. He's going to work hard. He's not going to transfer. I'm just kidding. But yeah. So the story about the funny story about that camp, that really wasn't that funny, but the funny story about that camp was about 2 days in to the camp. Every morning we would get up, we'd all go, we wouldn't stand in line, but you'd go into the training room and you get taped up. Okay. And after the second day, I go down with Dirk, and we always went together, and I just let him lead. I just followed right behind him. And he was great like that. He was like, come on, he's with me. He's with me. And I was like, thanks. We go into the training room to get taped up. And in the training room, there's a guy sitting getting taped up. He has a full beard. He was the only player at the camp that had a full beard. Okay. And, I sort of we both like that, whatever. And I remember we got taped up and we walked out, and I remember looking at Dirk and going, who was that? And he says, that's Worthy. And I looked at him, I go, James Worthy? And he goes, yeah, he was one of 2 players that were selected out of high school so people can understand, to be on the practice squad against the FIBA teams that were training to go play in the FIBA Cups.
Right.
And so that's why he had not been at the camp, but he had just gotten in. And I mean, I literally was like, all of a sudden, I'm playing with a man. I mean, literally, I was like, holy crap, you know, and he was as good as advertised. But my God, man, at that camp, Ralph Sampson, Steve Stepanovich, Clark Kellogg, Dominique, Dale Ellis, Howard Carter, who was awesome at LSU, Vern Fleming, Cliff Livingston. I mean, I could just go look at the class of 1970, the guys that came out of high school in 1979. Go look at the top. Well, just go look at the top 20. Every one of them was there.
Right.
So it was insane. It was insane, and it was fun. It was fun getting my ass kicked.
Right.
It was a challenge. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah, guarantee that.
Right.
So you graduated from Ridgeway in '79. You were recruited by some major college programs, you know, Memphis State, Ole Miss, Marquette, I think Duquesne and Tulane and University of Tennessee. And you ultimately chose to play for your dad's alma mater and Coach Don DeVoe at UT. I know you told me that I believe 50% of the reason was, you know, an emotional pick because of your dad. What was the other 50% that made you, you know, make that decision?
I think the what I meant to say was, you know, my blood ran orange. Okay. I never in my life thought I would get an offer from Tennessee.
Right.
Okay. But you know, there's I'm not sure whether we've even talked about this, but I mean, there's sort of a reason how I got there. You know, I don't know whether we've even talked about this, but I think it's important for people to know this. In the summer, first of all, the AAU system, the way it is now and the way most people right now are going to like imagine it, Team Thad, Team Penny, all this kind of stuff. We didn't have any of that. We had none of that back then. We had one team that represented Memphis, one, okay, and you know, one team represented Nashville, okay. It was just that's the way it was. I was really fortunate to actually make that team, and I think 50% of the reason that I made that team was my relationship with Dorsey Sims. He was the coach. The other 50%, if I'm just being honest, probably had to do with the fact that my best friend was Michael Brooks all through high school. And Michael Brooks was one of the top players in the entire country coming out of high school at guard. And we were best friends for great reason. We to this very day remain best friends. So anyway, I made the team. Cool team. A lot of names that you'll know. Maceo Battle.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to think of Steve Mitchell. I can't remember all the guys' names, but
yeah, didn't he go to UAB?
I think he went to UAB.
Yeah.
We had a cool team. It wasn't Andre. Who was it back then that played at Memphis that went to Mitchell? Curtis Green. He played for UAB. I can't remember exactly who it was, but what happened was me and Michael had, we've been hanging out together for 2 years, our junior and senior years. Well, we were like, I can't tell you how many times he spent the night at my house, and, we worked out together and stuff like that. Coach Sims decided to start me in the backcourt with Michael Brooks. Now, did I deserve to start on this team? No, absolutely not. When you wanted to, if you want to go by talent, the answer is no. But he went with chemistry. I knew exactly what my job was. My job was, besides the defensive part, on offense, my job was rebounding from the wing. My job was picks, screen, making great screens. But primarily, my job was to get Michael Brooks the ball when he was open. And that's what I did. I had 23 assists in one AAU game.
Wow.
Up in Ohio. I think Michael had like 47 points, something crazy like that. But that's actually where Tennessee saw me for the first time. Don Deaton, their assistant coach, attended this is how they did it back then. You had like a state championship, okay? And we went to Nashville. We either went to Nashville or Jackson to play almost like a mini tournament, between all the AAU teams from the various sections of Tennessee. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we won. We won, and I started. So they saw me play there. And then we went to the regionals, and the regionals were in Dayton, Ohio. And we ended up losing. It's one of those tournaments where you have to lose twice. Okay. So we had lost once, and then we lost once, but we got all the way to the championship. But the team that we had to face, we had to beat them twice, okay, before they beat us. It was like a double elimination, I guess that's what you would call it. And that team had Clark Kellogg and Kelvin Ramsey and Herb Williams. They were formidable. We actually beat them in the first game. And then they beat us in a thriller in the next game, and they moved on to the Nationals. We basically went home. But that's where Tennessee actually saw me play. And I honestly believe that the reason that Tennessee offered me a scholarship was multifold. I think that I don't think you can get more honest than what I'm going to say. I think that they recognized that it would look good. Okay. They had an extra scholarship. There were 5 players that they brought on that year. Okay. They had an extra scholarship. These days, people probably won't even understand that. But when you have 5 scholarships back in 1979, that was just unusual, very unusual. They had an extra scholarship. They knew that it would look good on the program because of my father being a 2-time All-American there. It wouldn't hurt, They knew that I could play, Maybe I'll never get to play, but they knew that I'd be able to compete on the courts from what they saw in the AAU and from the reports that they had gotten from Kentucky, North Carolina, and BC All-Star camps. I think they also recognized that Michael Brooks was my best friend. And they recognized that there was a really good possibility that if they get Craig Wiener, that they probably are going to get Michael Brooks, which they did, by the way. So I really feel like those are the reasons I was offered a scholarship at the University of Tennessee. I took it mainly because my blood bled orange. And, you know, as crazy as it might sound to some people, you know, 50% of me was ready to compete. I was like, you know, I should be here, you know,
Right.
and I felt like that all through my short-lived career there. I felt like that. I mean, the reason I left, as I told you, was because I was pissed off that I wasn't getting any run. And I was like, it was very obvious, not just to me, to my teammates too, that I should have been getting run. You know, I wasn't the only guy that left. 3 other guys left that were there with me right after I did for the same reason. So if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all the same, just simply because I think things happen for a reason. But, you know, if I had to do it all over again, I would have absolutely gone to Tulane. Coach Tom Green wanted me to go there. He recruited me hard. Super nice guy, super incredible staff. The reality, I was an 18-year-old kid. I didn't look at New Orleans the way I look at New Orleans now.
Right.
I really just looked at it like, it's down in Louisiana. You know, I mean, honestly, I didn't look at it like I do as an adult, you know. But, you know, I really, as a tough call to call him up and tell him that I'm going to go to Tennessee, although he understood. He was gracious and wished me the best of luck. So,
Right.
you know,
As you and I both know, moments in our lives, can have such a huge impact on us, and we can lose our zest or drive to do something for a while. You share with me that happened, your experience, in Knoxville with Coach DeVoe, and so you ended up heading to Miami for 3 to 4 months. What led you to Miami, Florida?
You know, I resigned my scholarship. Honestly, I didn't really have any idea what was next. I'm not even sure if I was 20. Maybe, I don't think I was. I think I was I think I probably was 20 when I went down there. I resigned my scholarship. I stayed for a semester. After that, I lived in an apartment. Sort of went to school. Sort of. I really had, I was partying. I don't know how to tell you any other way. I mean, I had discovered various partying activities, and I felt like there was no reason for me not to participate. And so I also continued. I did go for a stretch where I just fell out of love with basketball. And I was really good friends with this guy down there that hung around the basketball players. His name was Silk Cozart. Really, really good friend of mine to this day. And Silk was from Knoxville. He's from Knoxville. Probably would have been good enough to play at Tennessee. He's a few years older than me. But I just don't think he was big. I don't think he was tall enough. He was like 5'10", 5'11", but he was an incredibly good basketball player. And he played at Keene College, which is in Knoxville. But he'd come and he'd play, and he'd come and play pickup and with all of the players. And that's how I got to know him. Silk was a extraordinarily good-looking man. Okay, he was a model, and the reality is he was like, back before they were like Chippendales. He did like a Chippendales thing out on, I can't remember, Chapman Highway. There was a place out there where all the chicks would come, and he'd go out there on the dance thing and do his dance thing and stuff. And the reality was he's a great dude. He was fun to be with. We were partying our ass off, and we were hanging out we were looking for chicks. Sure. And we were he was a chick magnet, which just helped me. I just was like, this is great, and we remained great friends. And then all of a sudden in the spring came, and Silk was like, I'm going to go to Florida to model for, I can't even believe I remember these names, for Jess Anderson Productions. He's like, why don't you come down and hang out? And I was like, why don't I? It's like, I was not depressed. I was never really depressed. I was pissed, really pissed. And I think that when you're really pissed, there's probably some subtle form of depression that I don't know, but I didn't really, can I cuss on this thing?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say, I didn't really give a shit. I just really didn't give a shit. I got a job, like working some store. I had no problem doing that. Had great friends at the University of Tennessee in the alumni, that were like, you want to come work at the store, knew my father. So, I mean, I was okay, but I was not at all fucking happy about what had happened to me.
Right.
But so I looked at Silk and I was like, have you got a place to stay? He's like, yeah, I got this apartment. I was like, let's do it. So we got in our car. I called, obviously, my mother and father. I said, I'm just going to take a big time out and I'm going to go to Miami. And they were like, where? And I was like, I'm going to Miami. I'm with a buddy of mine. We're going to be fine. He's a model. And so we went down to Miami. I'm going to let everybody just use their imagination. It was just, and it was an insane, we had an insanely great time. I'll say it's a great time. I think Silk would even tell you that today. Because of what he was doing, this is going to just sound unreal to you. Because of what he was doing, it was mandatory per his agent for us to go to these clubs every night. It's like almost like our job. And we were given like carte blanche, everything. And man, we'd go out at 11 o'clock at night, and we'd be out till at least 3, 4, sometimes, the next morning, if we ended up at a lot of times people's homes, for like after parties and stuff like that,
Right.
that were as insane. Use your imagination. It was exactly like that, like right out of Scarface. Okay. Literally. Okay. And then we'd go to sleep. And then we'd get up, we'd work out. We literally had a basketball court around the corner from us. We played basketball every day. And then we'd take a shower, eat, and we'd go out again. We did that literally. I don't want to say it was every day because that's obviously you can't do that. But I mean, it was, if I was down there for 90 days, we did that for 70 days.
Right.
Okay. And I'm really fortunate because I just like woke up one day and just was like, this cannot go on. I was like, I literally in my head said, this is how people die. This is how people die. And I want to make sure everybody knows I was never doing any hard drugs. There was no, when I say hard, there was no heroin, there was no, anything that you can think of and that at that level. Pass. Pot, Quaaludes, Coke. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Harder, acid. No. But I really just like said, I think I'm probably gonna die, and I did the pick up the phone and cried to mom and dad and said, can y'all send me a ticket? I need to come home.
Right.
And they were like, it'll be at the counter. And I was like, I'll see you soon. And I left and came back to Memphis. Still really didn't know what to do, what I wanted to do. I actually enrolled at the University of Memphis over the summer, or part of whatever I could do in. And I think I was in there for like a couple of semesters. And then I ended up moving to New York, which is a whole different story. But just as a sidebar, Silk Cozart, who I can get you on this show, no problem, Mike, if you want. Silk Cozart went on to fame and fortune. He was his first movie that he did was White Men Can't Jump. He's in there, but he's at this point been in over 40 major films.
Wow.
With Denzel Washington and the people that he was in 61 Blocks or whatever the name of that movie was. But he's been in, he's been in, look him up, Silk Cozart. And he today also remains one of my very, very closest friends. He obviously made the right decision to go to Florida. I was like, can I get the check, please? I need the check.
Right.
Are you shopping for a new watch, an engagement ring, any kind of jewelry at all? What's up, Memphis? This is Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Grizzlies, encouraging you all to shop where I shop, Platinum Jewelers here in Memphis. Platinum Jewelers has a big selection of earrings, stockable rings, luxury watches, necklaces, bracelets, really whenever you need. 9387 Poplar next to Fresh Market in Germantown. So if you need anything jewelry related, go to my spot, Platinum Jewelers.
So you end up back in Memphis. You went to Memphis. You told me you started dating a girl named Sarah Webb.
I did.
She got signed by a major modeling agency, and that's when you talked about moving to New York. You head up there with her. Tell us a little bit about the school, CW Post. Opening the Hard Rock Cafe there. You worked with future major actor Vincent D'Onofrio, who had a Major part in the 1987 film Full Metal Jacket and also Men in Black. He's probably best known for Detective Robert Gorin and on Law and Order Criminal Intent for many years. And tell us about the friendship you guys developed. Working backstage at Live Aid in Philadelphia '85, and just a little bit about that.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, I'll start with Sarah, who is one of the sweetest women, girls in the world. We started going out here in Memphis. And like you said, all of a sudden, she got signed by Eileen Ford in New York. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting in Memphis, still young, and I'm 20 years old, and I'm like, how do I get to New York? Basically, is how my mind is like. Let's figure this shit out. And so in just one of those, I'm just trying to think of the word, serendipity. It's one of those things where somebody saw me playing, as crazy as it sounds, like either in the Bluff City League or JCC League or something like that. And they were like, you still got eligibility left? And I was like, yeah, I do. I don't know if I want to play anymore. Would you be interested to go into a Division II school? And I was like, where's it at? And they were like, it's in New York. Actually, it's Division III. And I was like, no, actually, I think it's Division II. Division II. And I was like, where in New York? And they were like, it's in Long Island. And I said, where? What's it called? They were like, CW Post. And I, of course, was conniving. All I wanted to do is to be with my girl. You know what I mean? That's all I wanted to be. And we had not been going out. It wasn't like we had been dating for months. We had started dating. You know what I mean? And, but she was awesome. I haven't talked to her in a long time. We've communicated a couple of times via emails. And I think we both still share the same, like, oh my God, that was a crazy ass time. So she's going to New York, and, so I start to work this angle, and I call the coach up there. His last name was Galizzi. And, I let him know who I am. The person that told me about this guy, he lets him know, like, hey, this is for real. Now that I think about it, what it might have been, the connection could have very well been a connection that I'd made when I played in the Maccabi games in 1979, for the United States. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's what it was, because there had to be something there. But anyway, I digress. So I talk to the coach. I tell him, I go, yeah, I'll play for you. I'm not going to be on there's no scholarship, but we'd love to have you come and play on our team. And I was like, can you help me get into school? It was not an easy school to get into. And he was like, I can take care of that. And so he did. And so off I went. My father, I remember looking at mom and dad and going, I want to go to school in New York. And of course, they were like, why? But of course, my dad was like, because he's from Brooklyn. So my dad was like, yes, like that. And I explained to them the situation, and they were kind of like, they bought it, So I go to I go to school at CW Post. I'm there for a month. And Sarah informs me that Eileen Ford likes her so much that they are going to send her to do collections in Paris for 6 months. And I'm like, I really didn't know what to say, we obviously, well, maybe not obviously, we actually maintained a relationship for about a month after she left, until we both acted like adults at 20 years old. And I think we literally said, this is just making no sense whatsoever. I'm sitting on campus and I'm kind of like sort of a big shot up there, transfer from Tennessee. I got girls knocking on my door. She's drop dead gorgeous in Paris. So I know she's got guys going. And we were actually mature beyond our years at that moment. And we just said, you know what? Go do your thing. I'm going to go do my thing. Perhaps we'll meet again down the road. It really wasn't anything like that. It was sad. Don't get me wrong. But it was like, what else are you going to do? This is stupid. And so, really what happened then was I started going to school. I was at school at CW Post. I still hated school as much as I always did. I never really liked school. College, I was good at things. I was good at things that I liked to do. I mean, I don't know how to say it any other way. Things that bored me or I couldn't understand, I had no interest in. Unfortunately, a lot of those classes were classes that were mandatory classes, so that's my reason for saying I really didn't like school. I loved marketing. I loved advertising. There were a lot of things that I really liked, but there were so many things that I really didn't like.
Right.
So I'm going to school and I'm practicing with the team. Okay. And we're actually like sort of a Division II powerhouse. Okay. We had a guy on our team named Mike Henderson, 6'9", probably about 250, very talented player. I can't remember all the guys' names. Greg Dixon was in the backcourt. The only way that I can say this is that Division II basketball back then was just a totally different level than Division I. And in Division I, they really didn't care how you put the ball in the basket, as long as you were putting the ball in the basket. Division II was more, since most of the players weren't as talented, if you had a really good big man, like the whole offense was run around. The object is to get the ball to your big man, because there weren't a lot of big men in Division II. Charles Oakley was, I think he went to Virginia Union. But I mean, that was kind of the game. And I really had developed into a little bit better scorer at that point in my life. And, when people would leave me open, I just would let it go. Well, I'd go to the basket. I'd fake the guy off and I'd go to the basket and score. And the reality is that Galeazzi, our coach, he just hated that. And I probably just didn't give a shit. And the reality is I quit before the season even started. I didn't even get there. I just looked at him and said, I just looked at him and I said, this is just not going to work. You know, I'm just going to go to school. And the players weren't real happy about it because they knew that I had skill level to help them out. But I had a great time getting stoned and playing intramural basketball with a bunch of people, drinking beers for the next couple of years. Had a great time, you know. And it was a beautiful campus. If any of you listening to this, you know, you can Google CW Post College in Greenvale, New York, and you'll see just exactly how beautiful it was. It was the summer home of. It was one of the summer homes of the C. Merriweather Post of the Post Toasties family, Post cereal family. It's absolutely amazing campus. So that was my stint in New York. And then I worked at the Hard Rock Cafe. I know you're like, keep going, dude, keep going. At the time I was up there, they were opening the Hard Rock Cafe in New York. It was the first one outside of London. My father was John Tigritt's dentist. John Tigritt's son is Isiah Tigritt, who was the founder of the Hard Rock Cafe. He also founded the House of Blues. When they opened the Hard Rock Cafe in New York, I'm going to say 1991, I'm going to say. I might be wrong on that. I got a Hard Rock Cafe gold card that would get me in front of the line, which was a line every night, whenever I wanted. Okay. And so on campus, you know, weekend rolls around, I'd look at my buddies and I'd be like, let's go. We get on the subway or the trains, we go into the city, and I walk right, it'd be a lot of 500 people, and I walk right in front, and they'd be like, come on in, man. I got to know all of them, mainly because they knew who I was, because they knew that my father was Isaac's father's dentist. And they knew I was from Memphis more than anything, because Isaac is from Jackson technically, but Memphis, you know what I'm saying? And so they treated me like royalty, you know? And going into my senior year, I went up to one of the managers there. Actually, it's interesting. I just talked to him the other day, Hunter Kane. I went up to one of the managers who I was really great friends with. These guys were, just so you know, these guys were like, I say I'm really good friends with them, but they were like 8 years older than me, 8 or 9 years older than me, 10 years older than me. And I remember looking at Hunter and going like this, man, I'd love to work here. And he just looks at me and he goes, are you serious? And I said, yeah. And he goes, come on, let's walk in the back. Took me in the back. He goes, fill out this application right now. He goes, you're hired. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? He goes, you're going to be what they call a floater. And I was like, okay, like pay, hours, you know. He's like, he goes, you keep coming up here at these times. And he's like, you can be a floater from 4 till 10. I said, I'm in school. He's like, 4 to 10. How's that? Takes me an hour to drive back to Long Island, I was like, he goes, on the weekend. I go, on the weekend, I can go till 2 o'clock in the morning. And he was like, gotcha. I was hired, literally, like the next week. And it was awesome. I was matched up with, once again, still one of my greatest friends to this day. His name is Michael Grozier. He's a little bit older than me. We were floaters. And what floaters did, what we did, our job was to I got to say this first so people can understand. For the first 2 or 3 years of the Hard Rock Cafe, it was open 7 days a week. And I know this is hard for people to believe, but like every single, I can only speak about night, okay? Every single night. Once again, there's not a show. There's not a concert going on. Okay. This is a freaking really cool restaurant, is basically what it is. Okay. There's no band playing in here. None. Okay. But an electric atmosphere. No question about it. We had a line every single night for 2 years. It did not matter whether it was pouring down Memphis rain. It did not matter if it was giant chunks of snow or sleet or 110 degrees outside. Did not matter. Line went around the corner. Our job was to keep the restaurant flow going. So we constantly, what you did is you came into the Hard Rock Cafe and you went into this bar that was shaped like a guitar. You went into this bar. We also had a bar upstairs. You went into one of those 2 bars, and then you waited for your name to be called for a table to eat. And when your name was called, you came out of the bar, you went in, we moved people into the bar. So we were in charge of the flow. We made sure that all the waitresses' tables were always constantly full. Okay. And the bar was constantly wall to wall. It was insane. I mean, there's kind of times we looked at each other, we were like, these people are insane, If we tell that about people that were in line in 100-degree weather, we'd be like, in our heads, we'd be like going, after we look at each other, we go, it's not that good. It's just not that damn good. But it was really cool. I mean, they had all the guitars on the walls and, actors. It was owned by Belushi and Aykroyd, and they were part owners. All the guys from Saturday Night Live were part owners. So they were that entire old Saturday Night Live crew, like the classic one with Chevy Chase and Jane Curtin and Gilda Radner and Bill Murray and all of those guys. They were in there all the time, drinking, having food, having fun. And so everybody was there all the time. It was kind of like, it was the hottest place. It was the hottest restaurant. It was not a club. You could not dance at it. There was no band to see. So but it was really fun. We were in charge of the flow, which was fun to do. We acted somewhat like we also were big enough that we were security. If needed, we could handle security. Isaac did such great things. The lines were so ridiculous that in the summertime, part of our job we would deliver tea, cold tea, ice cold tea, and ice in styrofoam cups to everybody while they waited in line. And we properly represented the Hard Rock Cafe. We were like, thank you guys for waiting in line for so long. Here's some iced tea. In the winter, we did hot tea, or I can't remember, hot cocoa or something like that. But, that was also one of the things we did. But it was once again, I'm looking at your audience and saying, just use your imagination. It was ridiculously fun and exciting. You really never knew what was going to happen on a nightly basis. You didn't know who was going to come in. Eddie Murphy was really big back then. He'd come in with like his posse, and we'd be at the door trying to figure out where we're going to put them. And we had upstairs these areas that were kind of cordoned off a little bit private, that we would use. It was the age of Eddie Murphy on Saturday Night Live. Yes, it was an amazing time. And yes, my very last thing I ever did for the Hard Rock Cafe was I worked at Live Aid in Philadelphia, and I was very fortunate to do that on my way actually to my first job in Houston, Texas, that hired me out of college. I did not graduate. I actually went down for an interview while I was in New York and working at the Hard Rock. I went down for an interview for a job at a company called Westcap Corporation, which at the time was the top fixed income trading firm in the country, even bigger than anything in New York. And they were in Houston, Texas. And I went down there on an interview just because they were going to start a training class, which they had never done. And I got tipped off, and I got an interview, and I went down there really just for experience, really just, never really thinking I was going to get the job. I hadn't graduated college yet. So I go back to New York. I do the interview, which I thought was fun, and I thought I did well. I went back to New York, and I'm working at the Hard Rock one day, and call me to the office. They're like, hey, you've got a phone call from these guys in Houston, Texas. They say they need to talk to you. And I get on the phone. I'm like, this is Craig. They're like, Craig, this is Julie Smith from Westcap Corporation. I'm making this name up. And I was like, hey, Julie. And she's like, well, we've decided to hire you. And I was like, what do you mean you decided to hire me? She goes, well, we really liked the way you interviewed, and we'd like for you to be part of the inaugural training class here at Westcap Corporation. I think the first thing out of my mouth was, well, I haven't graduated college. And the next thing out of her mouth was, we really don't care. And the next thing out of my mouth was, well, how much is this job going to pay? And she said, well, we're going to start you off at $4,800 a month. You're going to study for 3 months for your Series 7. And if you pass your Series 7, then, we'll put you with somebody on the floor. And if you don't pass your Series 7, you're fired, basically. And not sure she actually said it like that, but she said, let's don't talk about that, And I was really silly. I was sort of flummoxed, honestly, because I was like, you go to college and you get your degree and then you get a job. Back then I didn't know about people like Bill Gates. I didn't know about people like Steve Jobs. I didn't know that, you could actually not go to college and be successful. So I was really kind of like, but I knew when she said $4,800 a month, I knew how much money I was making at the Hard Rock. Okay. And I also knew how much money my very, very good friends that were really, really, really smart motherfuckers, I knew how much they were getting as their initial salaries at jobs in New York City, in advertising and marketing and those kind of areas. And these were elite students. Okay. I know that they were thrilled to have gotten a job at BBYNO or whoever, and their starting base salary was like $28,000. Remember, this is in 1985. Okay. And I knew what 4,800 times 12 was. Okay. And I was like, wow. Okay. And you don't care. And I was like, I just got to pass the test. And so another time, my mother and father weren't real happy with my decision making, but I made the decision anyway. And but the last gig I did have was I invited my sister up. Had my best friend with me, who once again is still one of my best friends to this day, Mark Dodonio. And I worked backstage at Live Aid in Philadelphia. Had Tracy come in, had Mark go with me, had Mark made sure they had passes and everything so that Mark could guard my sister while I was working, and they had a blast. Tracy ended up having a friend. They got in a helicopter and flew over the stadium. Tracy actually has pictures of these of them up in the helicopter. But yes, and that was really a great time. I've got some great pictures on Facebook. I've got my picture from Live Aid with Vince D'Onofrio.
Yep, I know that picture. And
Steve Karras, who remains a great friend of mine as well, lives out in Washington State. So yeah, we talked earlier in this interview about, not necessarily interview, but this podcast about, if I had to do it all over again, I said I would do it exactly the way I did it, because I'm a big believer in, things happen for a reason. And this is sort of another example of like, man, the crooked fucking road that I took, that I'm still taking to a great extent, I think you just try to be a good person and treat people well. Treat people the way your mother and father instilled it in you, and you'll be okay even if you just fuck up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Over and over and over again.
Yep. Happened to me many times.
Yeah.
So yes, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Now, my last question for you today is, you told me you play basketball, pretty competitively until you were 50 years old. You decided to retire even though you were uninjured. That's not why you retired. You just, decided just to give up the game that you love so much. and I'm sure you still love so much. We talked basketball, text during the tournament and everything. And when the Grizzlies were playing, how hard was that for you to do?
Quit playing?
Quit playing, yeah.
Easy. Easy McPeasy. I got to tell you, I don't know why I'm knocking on wood, but I'm just so used to it. I was very fortunate. I realistically played for 35 years, let's call it. Okay. Inside that 35 years, never had a major injury. When I say never had a major injury, I never really even had a twisted ankle. I pulled a particular muscle in my calf twice that put me out for probably about 3 months. Okay. But no knee, no Achilles, no anything. I recognized that I had a couple of, have I got a couple of minutes to tell you this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I went to see Ken Weiss because my Achilles was hurting me. My father tore his Achilles tendon when he was in his 40s playing handball. He looked at me and I said, it hurts. And I said, is it torn? And I said, my dumb ass. I'm like, can you x-ray it, Ken? And he's like, we can't really x-ray it, Craig. I'm like, can you please x-ray it? And I will x-ray it, Craig. And he x-rays it or whatever. And he looks at me and he goes, you don't have a tear. And I think he looked at me. This is probably when I was like 48 or 49. He looked at me and he's like, maybe you should think about not playing. He goes, I can tell you right now, it's not torn, but this is when they do tear, when they hurt. So I laid off of it for a few months, but I had committed to playing in all these leagues across the city. And so as soon as I could play, I was ready to play, and I played. But at 50 years old, I sort of, it's not like 50, like right when I hit 50, a bell went off. But in my 50s, I just kind of was like, my knee started hurting me a little bit. And I realized that my career, I'd done everything that I could even fathom doing in basketball. I mean, in 35 years, I'd played 4 times overseas for the United States. I played in the NCAA tournament. I mean, I didn't play in the NCAA tournament, but I was there on a team. Does that make sense?
Yes.
This is for our good friend, by the way. I went to the NCAA tournament, not as a spectator, not as a fan, as a player. And, my experience in Memphis, I played with, the creme de la creme for 10 or 20 years. And at the JCC, I played with all my friends for 20 years. In the city of Memphis, I played with Penny. I played with, LaBradford Smith. I played with, Vernon Maxwell. I played with, had the Dexter Reed, John Kilser. I played with everybody that, I was actually called to play in pickup games. I was actually that good, and I don't know, I really don't think I was that good, honestly. You know what? All those teams that called me to play in these elite pickup games with Will Fong and, and Jim Counts and all these other guys, they knew that I knew how to play. They knew that they did not have to worry about me trying to block Penny Hardaway's shot on a breakaway, and he's going to come down and twist an ankle. You know, that's a lot of those pickup games that I played in Memphis were very intense, but when a player had a breakaway, the other players just knew that you understood, like, just let him break away. You know, none of us want to get hurt out here. So it was very easy for me to stop playing. People ask me afterwards, what do I miss the most? The camaraderie. And I told them, hell no, it's not the fucking camaraderie. The thing I missed most, without question, was the sweat. I feel, and I may be an idiot for saying this, I might not make any logical sense to anyone, but there's just a different type of sweat. You know, I mean, I go walking and ride my bike now and you know, various workouts. It's not the same type of sweat that you get from running up and down the court, stopping, starting, putting your hands on your knees, having the sweat bead and drip down off your nose. I really miss that more than I miss anything about basketball. The camaraderie, you know, 30% of the people out there were schmucks anyway. So I'm thrilled not to be playing out there. I'm thrilled not having to dodge those son of a bitches.
Right.
Trying to steal the ball from me and block my shot, and I mean, yeah. So no, it wasn't easy. The most difficult time, I told you, was after I left Tennessee,
right,
for a period of time. I'd worked so freaking hard to get to where I'd gotten to, that I was shattered. Yeah, I was shattered when DeVoe said what he said to me, which was quickly followed by pissed.
Right.
But I was shattered. And to this day, I still have nothing to do with him. And
understandably.
Yep. And there's not a Tennessee event that I don't go to that piece of shit would try to come up and be jolly with me or my father. My father was much worse than me. I would have to look at my dad and go, chill out, Dad. Dad wanted to punch him numerous times to mention.
Right.
But that's because he's my dad.
Right.
You know? So
dads protect their sons.
Yeah.
So.
Just like yours.
Yep. Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. And he did many, many times, as well as my mom. You know, once again, as I knew this would be, having fun, having you on the show again, hearing basketball stories, which I love, and I know a lot of members of the audience are going to love too. I want to thank once again our sponsor, Platinum Jewelers. They're located at 9387 Poplar Avenue in Germantown, right past Johnson Road. Owner Preston Hudson and his staff have an amazing variety of jewelry there, so go check them out. And Craig, I look forward to having you back on for part 3 because we have great stuff to share.
Just so people know, I do have some great stories about Vince D'Onofrio. I have great stories about him. I was working with Vince at the front door at the Hard Rock Cafe when he actually got the role as Gomer Pyle in Full Metal Jacket. It was an amazing day. The story of him transforming his body to fit that character. I have a couple of Vincent D'Onofrio stories actually that are they're just really, really awesome. That maybe we'll get into on the next
Okay. That sounds great.
I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, they are worth telling. I mean, like, he put on like 60 pounds, something like that, to play that role. I mean, he was skinny. I mean, but when you watch Full Metal Jacket, I'll save the story. I'll save the story because it's almost that good.
Okay.
So,
we'll save it for next time for sure. Well, Craig, brother, appreciate you coming on. Look forward to having you back on soon for part 3.
Sounds great, man. Have a great day.
You too.
I'll see you for dinner.
All right. Sounds good.
Later.